Morning, everyone. Let me get this unmuted. There we go. How's everyone doing? Happy Saturday.
Morning. Doing great.
Awesome.
Doing great.
Throw in the chat where you guys are checking in from. Great state of Utah is in the house. We'll get started in just a minute here. Hey, Dr. Slade, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
How was your trip?
It was good. Yeah, it was really good. It's
Good.
awesome being able to interface with people.
Like,
Yeah, really. These days.
It's like, you get into your normal routines that I guess, fell back into place almost automatically.
me.
Sure. Really, that's the only other place where I meet people is at church, other than being at home. And a lot of people went back to work, but I think they still felt a lot of robotic.
Whoops. Sorry.
Whoops. Roboticness to it, and so they still, like, I was sitting down with somebody as we were masterminding out there, and she was back to work, but she said she still felt lonely, still felt like the sense of purpose hasn't come back, that purpose in life, and was looking for that, lonely, depressed, and unfulfilled. So I think a lot of people feel that way still, even though we're over a year probably out of isolation. And
it's taken a long time to come back, and there just aren't a lot of kind of incidental interactions with each other, and so much of our lives have gone online that it's unfortunately we don't see nearly as much of each other as we would like to.
Yeah. So that's coming back, and I'm going to be traveling a little bit more and working back into it. Also, Carrie and some of the leaders in our group and Isogenics are putting together a website, and we want to have testimonies. So we're going to have little videos that you'll send to either me or Carrie. We're still figuring that out, but just to give you a heads up on that, it'll be a real, it'll be an awesome website for people getting real quick testimonies, 30, 45 seconds. And so be thinking about that. And for those of you that are in Isogenics, and it'll be a great, kind of like a Monday night, but just the testimonies available on a website. So think about that. That would be really cool. So just before we get started, I just want to say thank you, Dr. Slade, for bringing all of this to manifestation. And I'm noticing now in my conversations, I don't always catch it, but at least I'm catching it. Like, it might be after the fact where my unhealthy side of my R or C as a part of the training, but at least I'm aware of it now. And I don't beat myself up because of it, but being aware of it allows me to course correct. So I know I'll shorten that gap to where I say it and then I realize it, and then catch it, and then catch it before it even happens. That's been a process over the 18 years with the different skills that I've learned, and this will be the same. So I really appreciate that.
That's good.
It's so funny too. You'll laugh at this. On Thursday morning, we do a training, business training. And it just so happened that everybody that was on the training, because some days there's more and some days there's less. And then whenever you start something out, there's always more, right? And then it weeds people out and over time. But it was just so funny that I felt my R and E-ness coming out. I'm really interested. Who's an R or an E on here? Everybody had mostly R and E. That was in
really
film. Yeah. So birds of a feather really do flock together. It was pretty like eye-opening that just, anyway.
It is kind of crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. If you guys are feeling the same way and just have a lot of gratitude and awareness that's come to you, type a 1 into the chat box, and looking forward to the coming weeks here this week. And So as far as announcements go, before we toss it over to you, I just want to check in with Carrie too. I know she's in the car with see if she has anything she wants to say, but you're not going to be here next week. Is that right?
Actually, give me 2 seconds. Let me make sure what time we're leaving. We might be able to do it.
Okay. Carrie, did you want to share anything before we?
Um, I had like a little housekeeping thing that I wanted to share, and in my true C fashion, I just finished teaching Shine, and it takes everything time to settle before I could get into the next thought. So maybe I'll come back if it's important, or I'll put it in the chat.
Okay.
Oh yes, I remember now. That was fast. If you are, and I'll put the link in the chat later, and I'll also put it in the Facebook group, but if you're receiving value from this group, and you would like to leave us a review, we would definitely love that. So I'll send a link, and if you feel so inclined, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Anybody, if we could all do that, that'd be awesome to have 100% of us leave a review. And Carrie, you're going to put
5-star reviews.
Yeah.
We're collecting that. Yeah, I'll put the link in the chat when I get home. I just have a short drive, and then I'll also put it in the Facebook group. So
Okay.
thank you.
Is there anybody that hasn't been able to get into the Facebook group yet that has tried, or any of that kind of housekeeping stuff? I don't want to take a lot of questions here, but if there's something on, the operations of all of the semantics and everything of this group, is there anybody that has a question on any of that or is having trouble with anything? And you should be able to unmute. If you can't unmute, or for some reason, type it into the chat box, and then we'll make sure that we can address those things.
And I'll just
All right.
add, if you are not yet in the Facebook group, one of the greatest values of being in there is that the calls are streamed and then saved in there. So you can, if you miss part of one, or if you'd like to rewatch one, they're going to be in the group. They'll stay there as long as the group exists, which probably is whatever forever means.
Yeah, it's been fun to watch different interactions there and people's ahas and what they're sharing. Did you find out on that, Dr. Slade?
I did. So we can do next Saturday. We're leaving later in the day. I'll miss the 27th, but we
Okay.
can do next Saturday.
Okay, awesome. Let me mute this out and we'll toss it over to you and we'll just get right into it. You'll need to unmute. Okay, there you go.
Okay.
Okay.
Am I unmuted? We good?
Yeah, you're good.
I'm really excited about today. Let me start presenting here. Let's share my screen. Maybe. Am I sharing?
Yeah, engage
Okay.
with isogenics.
Yep, good. Yeah, so with the last 2 weeks, we've done a pretty deep dive into a general overview of each of the 4 types, and hopefully that's been helpful in helping you recognize a lot of the underlying reasons why you do the things that you do, and also I hope you're seeing it in the people that you interact with, and I hope it's leading to different interpretations of the things that other people do as you interact with them. Today, we're going to really dive deep into why and motivation for each type. And then and then I'll let you know what we've got coming on the horizon as well as we move forward there. So, but I want you to know that that's so. The other thing too that I would just ask, and we're working on that paperwork here, but I would ask that you not disseminate in any, don't put yourselves forward as core experts. The NDA non-disclosure until you get certified. We're working on a certification program. We want you to be able to represent and spread the word, but we also really want to preserve the integrity of it. And it's easy to get kind of your brain initially wrapped around this and feel like you've really got it and run with it. And it's not that I don't want you to run with it, because I really do. I want it to get out there to everybody, but I just want to make sure that it doesn't get, you know, tweaked in its, as you run. So try to make sure, you know, just hold off on doing too much with the information that you're receiving.
Yeah, if I could add to that just a little bit, I mean, I think the biggest reason is knowing what your, you know, core motivation is awesome and fun, and how to apply it into your life to be a healthy you has different nuances and things that until you understand them, you know, we don't want this to turn into another version of the color code where people leaving thinking I'm gonna work really hard at being a different person. We want to teach you how to use this to be a healthy you, and so there are different nuances that just understanding what your type is isn't going to, you're not yet going to know how to do that. So that's what we mean.
Yep. And in my onus, I don't think about those things. So thanks, Gary. You said that better than I did. So thank you. Okay. So here are some quotes that you're probably familiar with, right? People buy products and services not for what they are, but for what they represent. When you're approaching your business, think about why you are doing it. Oops. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you are doing it. And so this is one of the great benefits of CORE, right? Is trying to help you really recognize some of the underlying processes and deep rooted motivations that you may have taken for granted or not even overtly recognized for most of your lives up to now. And trying to find and fulfill your why can feel a little bit like this picture. And the person here in yellow is a little hard to see, but when you're trying to do things for reasons that other people do them, or you're trying to be like somebody else, to replicate or copy somebody else. Now there's and that's different than like learning processes that work, right? But when you're trying to be and to be motivated by it, this is kind of what it can feel like internally. You can feel really disjointed and chaotic internally when you're not centered and when you're not consolidated. And it can also feel like this. And this is the goal that we want to help you get, is to get all your ducks in a row and really come to understand your why, and not only what your why is, but why it's your why, and then what to do with it and how to effectively engage in the why of other people, in particular, you know, your teammates, your team members, and people that you work with as you build your businesses, and certainly your families and the important people in your lives.
Can I add one more thing about that slide? Sorry.
Of course.
One of the things that, you know, being in the isogenics culture and then feeling, you know, how CORE fits in, we go to trainings and we learn all the tools of how to do this. And we, you know, we have to reach out, we have to follow up, we have to learn the tools, we have to be on training. And it can feel like that first slide, the disorganized slide. There's all these things that I have to do that people are telling me to do. And when you start to understand why your why is your why, and you start to understand your core, then all of those things still exist. Like the principles of building a business, you know, you're still going to have to reach out to people and follow up with people, but it feels different. It's coming from the inside out instead of outside in. And it's a breath of fresh air is what it feels like to me. So.
And your efficacy and efficiency will exponentially improve as you're able to come and work from the outside in instead of the inside out. So the first step in the 30-day action plan, you probably all know this really well, is what is your why? And so I want you to take a minute and write down what your why is. And I would, and of course, you know, we're talking in terms of being an entrepreneur and building your own business and being part of a team and a community. But I also want you to plug into what motivates most of what you do. You know, what is the why for not only for your business, but for your life? And just take a few minutes and jot down. And if any of you want to share it in the chat, if you feel so inclined to be that vulnerable, then go ahead and share it. Yeah, and I want you to keep that handy as we work through this information and presentation, because you may refine it a little bit as we work through. So now, why is your why your why? And a little hint here, if you're really plugging into yourself, the reason behind your why will be directly related to your temperament.
It's helpful for me to keep asking myself, and why is that important to me? And why is that important to me until I get to that core?
Your core motivation is at the core of your why. What is Isagenix's why? I believe this is their why. Freeing people from physical and financial pain.
Yeah, they've added to that as well, to be the most trusted health and wellness company.
Good.
They realized they wanted to. They it was to be the largest health and wellness company in the world, meaning they're making the biggest impact in people's lives. But they realized that big doesn't always mean doing it right, and so they felt like earning that trust from people by their actions.
Yeah, that's a good. What? Well, we can talk about that later. What we would like to add is why not also free people from emotional pain? And that's one of the great benefits that plugging into your core and becoming authentic with your why will make dramatic changes and improvements in your emotional health and your emotional pain.
There was a time when they were really pushing. They haven't relinquished that. They just haven't been out in the front. They've been busy trying to keep other things going. But was the physical, the financial, and the personal development. Those were the three keys that they felt made the important
Which is
foundation,
really good.
columns, or whatever you want to call it.
Let's help them bring that back.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm hoping to do. All of us, if we could all let Isagenix know, let your reps know what you're getting out of this program, and they know what healthy mind and body is. If you're related, if you remember that, say it was like that, but more complete.
Excellent. Okay, so what are some examples of a C's why? And I want you to put these in the chat. What do you, from what you've learned so far, what do you think are some of the whys for a C? Yeah, these are good. Connection, be understood, service to others, comfort, connection, held and support others. They don't like to see suffering, caring about the needs of others, care for others. Good. Helping others, especially those who put others first. Yeah. Yeah, and these are wonderful. You're doing a good job. And these are excellent examples of the things that will be why creating, being part of a community, having a sense where, having a place where they feel like they belong, and not only finding that for themselves, but also being able to help create that for other people, right? Good job. You're getting it. Why is that their why? Because of the two underlying motives that fuel almost everything that the C does: comfort and connection. Creating a place where they and others can feel and be settled emotionally. So, how do you help yourself and your team fulfill yours or their why? And we're going to touch on this part a little bit today, but this is also a huge piece that we'll be addressing in the weeks that come. But I also want you thinking about this as we go through these, really recognizing your own why and reason for your why, and then also thinking about, oh, well, what about the O's on my team or in my family, and what about the E's, and start thinking about that. Whatever you're not, pay attention to that as well. Understanding your core strengths and challenges is key to being able to really capitalize, plug into, clarify, and capitalize on your why. There are, one of the things that I hope that you've seen over the last couple of weeks here is that there are many things that each personality or temperament type naturally does that is very healthy. The core motivation and the resulting thoughts and behaviors that come out of that. There are things about a C that very much naturally line up with what we know to be healthy from the research, and there are things for an R that naturally line up with healthy, and there are things that that don't line up with healthy and don't line up with success for each type as well. And with those things, you can develop a skill, a process, or a partnership to be able to do the things that we need to do to be able to be successful without feeling like you have to become and be somebody else. Most of you have probably spent years, or at least a lot of effort, hitting your head against these walls, trying to change, kind of back to that disorganized picture at the start with the circles. And you do not have to be, nor can you effectively be somebody else, but you can use skills, processes, and partnerships to be able to do the things that you need to do in order to be successful. Because you still have to be able to, right? If you want to harvest corn you have to plant corn, right? And you can't plant wheat and hope to harvest corn. And so, and the cool thing about this is that if you understand how to be a healthy you and how to get the most out of other people, then you can all plant and harvest corn, and it will just be done in a little different way. So a skill is a learned and practiced tool or technique. A process is a systematic series of actions directed to some end. And a partnership is just that. It's accessing the strengths of other people to help you do things that don't come naturally to you. And so we're going to show some examples of these as we go through here. But does that make sense that by using skills, processes, and partnerships, you can help capitalize on your strengths and compensate for some of the natural challenges that are not going to go anywhere?
And Dr. Slade, like you
Yeah.
were saying earlier too, that's not an easy thing to do.
No.
Like it's not easy at all. I mean, but through this kind of training, you know, we become more aware and we can start working towards a healthy road to get there. But it's a lot of, would you say it's a lot of internalizing, a lot of pondering, a lot of practice, a lot of, you know, experience, and really wanting to, you kind of have to focus on that, like not necessarily put the blinders on and just do that, but it has to be a top of the mind awareness to really develop those types of abilities to do that.
Yes, and what you said was such a perfect example of temperament as well, because for C's and E's, right, then it is a lot of internal processing, a lot of deep diving inside, and for ours it is that focus. And so I mean that if you listen to how I talk, if you listen to how Dave talks, if you listen to how other people talk, you'll hear our temperaments just screaming through our words. And so, yes, you absolutely have to be able to be intentional about it, and how that intentionality, I don't know, how that intention looks will be different depending on whether you're a C or an O or an R or an E. And knowing it's exactly right. He mentioned just there, he mentioned some skills and processes without even thinking about it, probably, of how to do that successfully from his RE perspective. And that's a good example. Dave's done a really good job of naturally plugging into skills and processes that work really well for who he is.
And I tried to be a little bit more temperamental, less R&E in that statement by saying maybe not putting the blinders all the way on, because
Right.
I'll put the blinders all the way on, right? So I did give a little bit of allowance for some other temperaments there by not totally putting the blinders on.
Yes. Yeah. But that's
Yeah.
how our brains work, and that's the beauty of that. So to develop a skill, you want to set a specific goal, create a plan, determine ways to make it fun and easy. Again, that kind of depends on who you are, right? Fun and easy is really helpful if you're an O or an R. The fun part, and so the fun part there resonates with the O, right? And the easy resonates with O's and R's because of the hassle. If it's too much hassle, it's going to be really difficult for an O or an R to be able to do it, because there comes a point where it's just too much. Support system, accountability partner, great. And I'll share some specific examples in here. Support system, who does that really resonate with? C's and O's, right?
I would also say like the definition of fun, because in a lot of ways hassle is fun for me. So
yeah, which is my worst nightmare, so or one of them.
And
And
somebody's
an
asking if
accountability
these
partner.
slides are available. This is being recorded. Again, going back to what Dr. Slade said, this is great for our own personal understanding and learning, but you don't want to be like posting these things on Facebook and things like that and social media saying, look, here's what I'm learning. You don't want to do that. But for your own personal study, that's why it's recorded in the Facebook group so you can revisit them there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get you some more. My goal is to have you all become so versed in this that you can be experts in being able to help help get this information into people's hands. I just want you to do it in a way that maintains the integrity of the system. And repetition. Skills, it's neurons that fire together wire together. The more we do something, literally the thicker those neurological pathways become in our heads. And so this is just an example of a process, right? This is a process of how to develop skills.
Can I just speak to that just for a second? Because that's something that really was like, to me, was like a sticking point. Like, wait, you can't put me in a box. I'm an offspring of God. Like, we have infinite potential. But that's not the same as saying what you're saying. I mean, what you're saying is in alignment with that and in harmony with that. We can learn these skills. There's some neuroplasticity where we can develop a neural net and these, wire our things in our brain, but they're not going to be our motivational things, right? It's not our core motivation that makes us our why. We still have unlimited potential and we're not in a box. It doesn't take away our unlimitless possibilities for us, but in learning and developing those skills to reach a goal isn't the same as temperament and how we can learn some of those skills and partnerships like you're saying. I'm still going to have my core motivations no matter what the skills and partnerships are that I develop. Is that right?
Yep, it's the difference. Yes, absolutely. Most of you have probably at some point in your lives experienced the challenge of threading, like threading a nut on a bolt or something. And when you cross thread it, you can try to torque it on there and you can normally get it. You can get it to go on a little bit, but it just doesn't work well. And you either have to apply a tremendous amount of force and ruin the bolt that you're trying to screw the nut onto. That's what it's like to try to go against your natural wise, your natural temperament. And then when you get it and it's not cross-threaded and it just slides right on, that's what it feels like to come into harmony with who you naturally are. So yeah, that's really, really good clarification, Dave. Thank you. Okay, developing processes. And again, we have a lot of information on this, and we'll hopefully get into this in subsequent levels of our trainings here. But just really, kind of 10,000 foot view. To develop a process, you determine the desired outcome. Why is it important to me? Identify the challenges, what makes it hard. Recognize your core strengths. What strengths do I naturally have that can help with this? Create structure. What can support me in the process? Oops. And again, just, habit stacking, evaluating the current process, bottlenecks. We have a lot of tools that we'll get to in other programs as we move along that really help on the behavioral side of things to incorporate some of these things. Focus on the process and the outcome will follow. Okay, see strengths. I want you, and again, we've got a handout, a worksheet or workbook that we'll be getting to you shortly. But I want you to either make note or something, if you're a C, of these strengths as we go through them that you possess. Create comfort, accommodating, enjoy making others feel good, sensitive and available, aware of the emotional climate, go with the flow, intentional. And C's hardly ever do anything without thinking through it first. They hardly say anything or do anything without thinking through it first. They're careful with words and actions. Willing to put in time and effort to connect with the end of connecting. Some of the rest of us put time and effort in with different things in mind or different goals, but a C will, a strength of the C is that they're willing to put time and effort in with the end being to connect. Help others feel seen and understood. Able to see connections others might not see. Did you recognize some of those that are naturally in yourself? Good. How can these strengths be used or useful in building your isogenics business? Again, we're going to get much more specific into this, but I just want you to jot down 2 or 3 things that these natural strengths, and you probably don't even recognize that you are abnormally strengthed, you're abnormally gifted in these things, because we tend to think that everybody's good at what we're good at. But what I want you to know is that these things are not things that other temperament types are as naturally good at as you are.
Are you gonna, because I don't want to put the cart or jump ahead here, like, because all of this is like feel good stuff, right? Like this is the kumbaya, right?
Right.
And in sales, it's not always like that because other people have opinions. And if a C doesn't want to ruffle the feathers of other people's opinions, then they might have a hard time making the sell because they're going to have to override that person's opinion because they can see something that other person can't, and that person's not seeing it. So for their good,
Yes.
they need that thing, right? Like literally they need it. It's what they're looking for, but their opinion gets in the way. Does a C have a hard time? And again, if you're going to talk about this later, we could address that later.
I am, but I do want to, but it's a really good question. So a C will not override. What a C will do is to work around. C's are really, really naturally good at working with momentum. But if you know how to do that, again, skills and processes, if you know how to do that when you're met with resistance, instead of just disappearing, which is what a lot of C's will do, using your natural strength of being able to go with momentum and go with the flow. And yes, we are going to get much more specific into that.
Would it be hard for like a book that comes to mind that helps with sales, How to Win Friends and Influence People? Would a C naturally be inclined to go and read a book to find out that skill, or would that be something that is not a part of their motivation?
Absolutely. Yep. That's really a natural kind of skill or process to use, probably more of a process. It for C's and E's is to go look for a book and something that they can go learn how to do that. More so than an O or an R would naturally do. Okay, so these are some of the predictable challenges. And again, that's not an exhaustive list of C strengths, and this is not an exhaustive list of C challenges, but I want to get your wheels turning a little bit. C's avoid discomfort, which is kind of what Dave was talking about, right? When things become it's time to talk about the business, or it's time to ask for the sell. That's a pretty uncomfortable moment, right? And so a challenge for the C is to avoid that kind of discomfort. C's tend to expect others to accommodate them in a very subconscious way. Why? Because asking to be accommodated is really unsettling and really uncomfortable. And so C's want to be seen, but they don't want to have to ask to be seen. Can wait to be invited for others to make what they want to happen. Can avoid speaking up about their needs, get their feelings hurt, can be insensitive and hold grudges. which may, and I don't know that we talked a lot about this when we talked about the C, but this is an interesting dynamic that occurs with Cs. When a C is unhealthy, they can become so focused on avoiding discomfort that they can actually become pretty insensitive to other people, and they can say and do things that they would never want said or done to them. And it cuts them off from some of those natural strengths when they become super motivated and consumed by trying to avoid discomfort in any sort of snake that might be in the grass. And it really, this is one of the things that an unhealthy C really cuts them off from their natural strengths. They can get stuck and wallow in the past. They can expect things to be easy and settled. Again, that they want flow. They want things to go. They're really good at going with momentum, and so when there's not momentum and when things are not going in a good direction, it can be really hard. Have a hard time differentiating others' emotions from their own. You know, there's a strength that's talked about. I'm sure you guys have heard about it in one form or another, but like being an empath. That's a lot of times C's can feel so much about what's going on that they can have a hard time differentiating this is my emotion and this is their emotion. They want to be seen and heard without risk or vulnerability. I talked about that a little bit. They tend to ruminate. So here's the key. How can you use your strengths to help you manage the challenges of your temperament? Because these challenges are not going to go away. These are part of the things that are natural consequences of the wonderful things about you, right? You can't pick up one end of the stick without picking up the other end. And so you can't have all of the wonderful things without these tendencies. And so learning how to healthfully manage them is imperative. So I'm going to just give you a few examples of this. And then again, we're in the workbook that we'll give you. You'll have a place to identify specific challenges that you see. And then identify skills, processes, or partnerships to help with that. So I'm just going to give you a few examples. So challenge might be time required to connect, settle thoughts and emotions, right? When the C strength of being able to see how things are connected create to the challenge of not being very good in the moment, right? Needing time to let the sand settle and to process. And so a process that can help with that is to prepare before. Like if you know you're going to have a crucial conversation, or you know you need to resolve some conflict or address something with your partner or with your children or with one of your teammates, you can take that time beforehand by organizing your thoughts, or you can circle back around. You cannot eliminate the need to have time to process. So you can either do that before or you can do it after, but you have to give yourself space to do it. You can also ask for and allow time for that internal processing. Let the other person know how your brain works, and and this can be difficult if you're in a relationship with either an O or an R, because they don't want things to drag on or to have to revisit things several times. And so let them know, I'm probably going to have some other layers of this, so please don't be frustrated with me when I come back around to it. A skill for this challenge is journaling. Journaling or writing is a really great tool to use to help you connect the dots and organize your thoughts. A partnership example, talking things through with a friend or partner. So these are just examples of processes, skills, or partnerships that you can use to address this innate challenge. Another one, social drain. When C's are, again, what?
Can I speak to that? The thought process, the time required thing.
Yep, we lost your video, Carrie.
Oh,
There you are.
there I am. Okay. Sorry about that. I wanted to like go back to what Dave was saying a little bit ago, where, not putting in a box and being able to develop skills to, to do things that other temperaments do. This is one of the differences, and I would love for you to not go deeply into it because I don't want to divert. But to share, like, this is one of the differences. I, as a C, will always take time to connect and to settle my thoughts, and I'm always going to need to take time before or after. So the skill or the strength that I can develop or is the skill to get my thoughts organized and to be able to share them and to be heard. But I will never, because of who I am, this is where the differences come in. I will never be able to like think fast on my feet when it isn't a thought that's already been, thought of for a while. So can you like?
Yeah, two things that I want to comment on from what you said. One is not every seed does take that time. That's a healthy tool and process to employ. When a seed doesn't do that, then the sands never get fully settled. And so it's like a ball of yarn. The sea brain will just continue to get tied into more and more knots if it doesn't have that time to settle. And so a C should always, but doesn't always. And so that's one thing. I don't remember the second thing you said, Gary.
Just that I won't ever be the one, as almost 95%, like almost all C. I won't ever be the one that like just is quick on my feet.
Yeah, that is an innate aspect again, and it's the side effect, right? The reason why that's not like why you can't get rid of that is because it's a side effect of the strengths of how your brain works. C's are so naturally talented or gifted or blessed or whatever you want to say with the ability to see how things connect. And the reality is that the complexity of that web takes time to do. And so you go ahead, Dave.
So let's just take isogenics and the skills that you need to build a team, right? To build a customer base and a partnership with other leaders. I might be getting caught up between like a R and a C, like maybe C's are more apt to listening and taking direction and then going and learning the skill like an E would. Maybe the R's are more like, no, that's not it, or no, that's too much of a hassle. I'm not going to learn that skill when they really need to learn that skill. But as far as a C goes, they may not be quick on their feet, but there's only so many things that we need to know about our business and connecting with people and making the sell. So when they learn what those skills are and, they become a learned mechanism in them, maybe they don't do it well in the beginning, quick on their feet, but as they learn it and through repetition, they become really skilled at being able to do that part of the business because they did make that effort to learn it. Is that correct? And would that be correct? Something that's out of their temperament? Like they're not going to learn a skill to go for the goal, but they've got to recognize that I do need to learn that skill. And I can be quick on my feet if somebody says, well, it costs too much. Because they practice it, scripted it out, even maybe role played it, they can learn to be quick on their feet with that in the moment and do that with other parts of the business as well, where they can then become well-rounded in the business.
Yes, absolutely. And what that becomes is a settled, prepared response for the C.
Settled, repair, response. So that's what
settled, prepared response. So they've already thought about that beforehand. They've done the work, right? They've done the work to figure it out, to have it settled. They've practiced it. And so that's a perfect example of what I was talking about here with prepare before. And so then when you're in the moment, the sands have already settled and what you're going to do. Now, when something becomes unsettled, then you got to go through the process again. But absolutely, we can have prepared and practiced responses. Yes.
And
And
so
the
we
different,
all, I just want, let me just, because it fits perfect, we all need to learn those skills. Some temperaments are more motivated by learning those skills for specific reasons, and they just like take the bull by the horns, but we all have to learn those skills. And as a C, then they need to realize, okay, an unhealthy part or a challenge for me is to do that so I can be quick on my feet in the moment. But when they recognize that, it's kind of like that naming it to tame it. So, again, another reason for this program that we're doing is for us to recognize these types of things as well as the others. But I would think that this would be something that, again, it's the hard that I was saying, and it's going to be difficult, is understanding that we just talked about for a C in learning those skills, because they're not naturally going to be motivated by to do it and therefore jump on it, and learn
Yeah.
that skills to get to the goal. But now they recognize, oh, I do need to do that, and I need to do it for different reasons, but I still need to do that.
yeah, the difference is if I learn a script and I've practiced responses and I've looked at all the objections and what I'm going to say, I will have that down. If somebody says something different that I'm not prepared for, it can be very unsettling because I haven't had that thought process yet. And that happens in conversation all the time. I can't plan what somebody else is going to say. So if I approach it thinking they're going to say exactly like this, and then they don't, it becomes unsettling for a while. And the thing that's important to mention here, and why I think I wanted to bring this up, I don't want to deliberate over every single one of them, but it's not broken that happens. But when you don't realize that it's not broken, it can make you feel, it makes the overwhelm even bigger, and it can make you feel like what's
are
wrong
broken.
with me? I'm broken. What's wrong with me? And so understanding the skill of it's not that I'm broken, it's just new, and letting yourself stay calm and even asking, give me a little bit and I'll come back and answer that in a little while, is that's a healthy way to manage that, because it is going to happen even if you're prepared.
Right. And the more you do something, the more things that you're prepared for, right? That's the practice. But it's really differentiating between the what, the how, and the why. There are whats in everything that have to be done in order to succeed. How we go about doing them or learning how to do them there's not a way to do that. And why we go about doing them, there's not a way or a why for that. But the what has to be done, right? Again, a dumb example, but if I never plant corn, I'm never going to harvest corn. I have to plant it. But how I plant it, why I plant it can be very different. So really good clarification there.
And that feeling broken, as in my observation, and seeing it again and again, is what causes the casualties in network marketing.
Exactly.
Giving up on their dreams when really they had the vehicle. So this should be really revealing for all of us, and especially those that are having a hard time of learning these skills. And the light at the end of the tunnel of a conversation where you didn't prepare for that response, there's only so many responses. That's been my experience. There's only so many responses that you're going to get. So over time, if you desire and you choose to, you could really learn to be quick on your feet as a C by really, again, taking the time that it takes to develop that.
Yeah. And I would change quick on your feet, because even the word quick can be triggering for a C. But prepared is great language for C. You can
one of the challenges with that is if I'm having a conversation in a group of people and I'm a C and I have a thought, it still is going to take longer to come out of my mouth than it's going to come out of the R mouth. So the R will very often jump in and cut the C off when they don't understand it. And then, anyway, so that's some of the dynamics when we understand that, like the C isn't like not going to say, anyway, they might not say something, but if they want to say something, it probably will take a few more seconds to come out of their mouth than it will if you're an R or an O.
Yeah,
Anyway.
and that's a really good point, because that's a lot of times C's will feel stupid because it does take a little bit of time. And this is not about intelligence, it's about how our brains work. And Yeah, really good points. Let's go on to social drain. A process that can be practiced here is to be intentional about taking time and creating relaxing space to be alone and recharge. Recognizing that, again, it's not a problem that you have to recharge. You can recharge and then you can really connect intensely. A C can connect super intensely, deeply, comfortably, but you need time to recharge. Challenge of being socially overwhelmed. A process, plan with both structure and flexibility. So have a plan, but then you can build flexibility into your plan. So then you're prepared, you're not thrown off guard. It doesn't feel like a curveball. Include space for transition time and possible spontaneity of others. Again, these are just examples. I really want you to do this with challenges that you identify yourself, and we'll give you some help in doing that as well. Okay, so let's move on to the O. What are some examples of an O's why? Again, put them in the chat, please. I want to save the world. Fun. Happy, party, travel, dance. It always works out. Let the good times roll. Yeah. Yeah, those are good examples of typically an O's why is going to be about creating enjoyment in their lives and relationships. It's going to tie into being happy and enjoying what they're doing. Why is that their why? Optimism and positive emotion. They see the potential in things. Yeah, I didn't see who said it, but it's always going to work out. That is such a natural mantra for the O brain. It's this belief that it'll be all right, which then can be really devastating when it's not all right. But that's the underlying reason why we O's have the whys that we have. O strengths. Whoa, where'd that go? Fun and optimistic. They forgive easily. Interested in and open to almost anything. And again, when you're selling something, O's are going to be initially very interested in almost anything. They're going to get it. They're going to see the potential right off the bat. They easily compliment and give praise. They're great cheerleaders. They're naturally good at helping people feel better. Spontaneous and flexible. They laugh easily. They don't take things too seriously. They love to brainstorm and figure things out. They prioritize social interaction and friendships. They're enjoyable to be around. They're great at breaking tension. How can, again, if you're an O, jot down two or three things of how these strengths can be useful in building your Isagenics business. And again, I want you to recognize and just, it doesn't mean that C's, R's, and E's don't have any of these things going on. What this means is that these are natural strengths for the O temperament. But O's don't have a corner market on these things. and C's don't have a corner market on the strengths that we presented over there. This is just like, this is screwing the nut on really smoothly. These things are squarely within your wheelhouse if you're an O. O challenges. They get bored easily. They make promises that later might be hard to keep. They might not even remember that they made the promise. Can be forgetful. Difficulty dealing with conflict. Others can feel forgotten in a crowd. Low tolerance for hassle. Issues can build up because they don't want the unpleasantness of addressing them. They can be difficult to pin down. Can be difficult to engage in serious conversations. They'll talk all day as long as it's a fun conversation to be having. Difficulty following through with details to make things happen. Can overcommit in an effort to please others, or just because they think that they should be able to do everything. How can you use your strengths to help you manage the challenges that you recognize in your life here? Guess they are in your face right now too. Our healthy and happy O coach, Camille, I think Camille is on here. Dave, could we unmute Camille?
Yeah, let me find her here. Camille. Okay.
Camille, are you with us?
One sec. Okay, she's a co-host now.
Okay. Camille,
Hi.
hey. Do you have anything to add on some of these strengths and challenges for the O?
Well, you have a great list. But one of the things that I would definitely add that I struggle with is following through. I tend to get super excited about stuff and like want to wrap my head around it. And then once I get bored or there's resistance of the stuff that I struggle with, then I like want to back away.
Or bounce onto something more enjoyable, right?
Yeah, definitely. But I definitely can agree with this list. And I would just echo what Carrie said, like for all my life, I really thought O's, like the attributes that made me was wrong and not productive and flaky and not me. And so just being able to know that it's not wrong to be me, but that I can add other things, know what my weaknesses are, but add to the things that need to be added to make them my strengths. So
Could
Yeah.
O be mistaken for a red because when they do get excited, they're all in, but as soon as they hit some resistance, like you were saying, Camille, they back away where a red would just keep going through.
Yeah. Yeah, they can be R's and O's can both look like reds in certain aspects because they have a lot of energy. They have R's and O's have more external energy than C's and E's. But then when it comes to barriers, Onus behaves very different than Arnis does. Okay, so here I want to just again give you some examples. So can be forgetful. A process that can help with this: alarms, reminders, develop a habit stacking. Again, we've got some additional training later on in subsequent levels here about some of the specific skills here, but those are things that you can use. Boredom, which those of you that are not O's may think that's a funny challenge, but it's true. A process: insert fun throughout the day. Switch activities, even if they're not fun activities, switch activities several times throughout the day. A skill: brainstorm possibilities. If you find yourself bored with something, brainstorming is an effective skill. Challenge a follow through. what Camille mentioned. An example of a process that you can utilize, get to a stopping point and go a little further. So there's already momentum when you start again. This is one of the things that I talk about in the book. It can be difficult for an O to get the ball rolling. And so if you can keep it rolling, so a lot of time when I was writing the book, I would finish a section and I would start the next section so that when I came back to it, there was already a little bit of momentum in my brain to grab instead of thinking, okay, now what was I going to do now? You know, so that's that's a little bit of a process that you can use there. Partnership, enlist others like E's and R's to help with follow through. If you're an O and you put yourself in a position where all of the follow through is up to you, you're going to fail a good percentage of the time. Where there are other people like E's and R's who are so good, and C's are too better at O's at this. So partner and capitalize on other people's strengths.
One of the
Okay.
quick example, one of the ways that we partner up is like even just in creating slides. I'll create slides even if I don't know exactly where you want to go, because that like gets the ball rolling, and then it's fun to watch you jump in, and like, but starting it from a hard stop is not super easy for you.
It's hard for my old brain. Yeah, and so that works. That works. That's a great example of a partnership. And Carrie, one of Carrie's important roles in Healthy and Happy is that production piece, which is something that I'm not very good at. So it's a great asset to our team. Okay, URs. Write down 2 or 3 whys. And again, share them in the chat. What are the whys for an R? Results, progress. We have to have more R's on here than Dave, don't we? More for all, yeah. Accomplished, to feel accomplished. Other thoughts on our whys? See what I've created. Good, those are good examples. See plans come together, growth, get it done. Yeah, those are good. Growth, get it done. Likes to see things, plans come together. That can kind of depend on that can be dependent if you're an R, because an R doesn't typically like things just for the sake of liking them. But if there are things that are on your radar that are bugging you, then seeing those things get checked off and seeing things start to come together is just music to the ears of the R brain. Great examples. Okay, so why is that there? Why? Resolution, getting things done. That is the underlying motivator for the R brain. They are so good and so naturally motivated at creating movement and getting things done. Okay, again, I want you to notice these strengths. They're great at getting things moving, willing to address things, and willing to say what others won't. I could share so many examples of that. Intense serial focus on resolution and outcomes. They don't let things build up. Really good at thinking on their feet. In fact, let me just talk about one of the most frustrating things, and this is R's don't do this very often, but if an R gets too many things on their plate, it feels like a hassle, and that buildup starts to feel like insurmountable. And if an R feels like there's more things than they can accomplish, that really grinds at that underlying drive to get things done. Because remember that the way resolution works is when something comes on the radar and it's not resolved, it creates emotional distress for the R brain. It's like nails on the chalkboard, and getting it done alleviates that emotional consternation. And so when you've got too many things that you're tending to, and you can't serially focus on things to get them done, it becomes really frustrating to the R. They're great defenders.
That's when we just take a nap.
Right.
Yeah.
And then come at it again.
Yeah, someone else had said that leads to shutdown, which probably is the nap, right?
Exactly. Yeah. R's are willing to go to bat for you. They keep track of things. They can shift gears quickly. They have a lot of energy. They can successfully have a lot going on to a point, right? We just talked about that. They act quickly. They forgive quickly and move on. How can these strengths be useful in building your isogenics business?
There was a comment made that I love, and while people are writing, that the joke in our family is you don't have to wonder how we feel about you because we've already told you, which is
Right.
one of the strengths of the R, right?
That's
Really.
a great strength. Yes. Okay. Let me give you some examples now of challenges. Others can feel run over. They tend to pop off. Where a C will hardly ever say anything without thinking about it. One of the great benefits that also comes with the challenge of the R is that most things that come into the R brain come out of the R mouth. Their focus and attention on others can feel intense. When the eye of Sauron does come on you, it can feel like a laser going right through you. They can be impatient. They can feel like everything is their business. Tend to be initially defensive. They don't always notice or prioritize details that might be important to others. It can be challenging for them to wait until others are ready. Waiting around and having like all of these several things or anything that is out of their control and in their way of being able to create movement, super challenging. Can burn the candle at both ends. Can get distracted. What skills and processes can an R develop to help manage the inherent challenges of their temperament? I'll give you some examples. So the challenge: intense, explosive communication. It's kind of that initially defensive one. Process. We have an entire conflict management system that is a process built on with several skills to help resolve conflict in a healthy and effective way. It's a great process for an R to use to be able to help them do that. Again, that's to come in subsequent classes here. Communicate with the other person about your tendency to react strongly and let them know ahead of time that it isn't about them. Again, how we interpret something determines how we feel about it, the meaning that we assign something, and just knowing that intensity isn't about me, right? It helps me know how to interpret that. Another really great, this is actually a skill, probably more than a partnership, or more than a process, but quickly make repair attempts. Apologize if you've hurt someone's feelings. Capitalize on your natural strength of getting over things quickly and make those repair attempts really quickly. Challenge: frustration with the time it takes others to communicate. Process: before meeting with people, remind yourself that your goal is the relationship or teamwork. If it is a skill, practice square breathing. Again, that's a skill that you can incorporate that has been shown to literally reduce the levels of cortisol. It slows the system down. Partnership, enlist others. C's or E's as an example to build connections through listening. Challenge, burning through people, numbers. Partnership, you can acquire and partner with others, C's and O's, to nurture relationships and inclusion. You don't have to be everything. Does that make sense? I just in these, I just want you to see how you can take a challenge and either directly access a strength or develop a skill, a process, or a partnership to help compensate for that innate challenge. Okay, what do you think? Again, in the chat here, what are some of the whys for an E? To make things better. Make things run efficiently. Practice disciplined to expand capacity for cultivating healthy relationships. Make things repeatable. These are perfect. There's got to be a better way. Finding solutions to complex or simple problems. Get the truth right way. Where's one? That's yes.
Is that an E that wants to find Waldo before?
Totally.
Okay.
Yep. Well, anybody might want to find Waldo. It's going to be the E's that are going to find
The book doesn't get put down until you find Waldo.
right.
Unless
Or
it's
find the keys.
unless it's your goal, the art I think could probably stick with. Well, I mean, the hassle might get in the way, but if that's the
Right.
art goal, I think they would stick with it too.
Yeah. Until it became too much of a hassle. Yes, these are all great. And one of the things that I want you to really notice here in some of these answers is that there can be a different objective for the E, right? But whatever the objective is, the E's Y is going to be making that objective better, making that process better. And so recognizing the subjective nature of your objective is really important, because you can marry the objective with the how to do it. And so recognizing that you guys, there must have been something funny said. What was said in the chat that I missed?
What's the point of finding Waldo anyway? And she's an R. So
There you go.
yeah.
They made the book specifically for us to find Waldo.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, why is that their why? Exactness, improving things. If the E brain is thinking, it's going to be thinking about how to make something better. That's what the E brain does. E strengths. All looking to see how something could be made better. Have a great deal of confidence in their thoughts and opinions. They think through things very thoroughly. Very willing to show up and to work on relationships. Willing to slog through difficulty to do things well. Great at organization and creating structure and processes. Willing to practice and implement new skills and practices. They're willing to invest in quality. Detail-oriented. Where O's and R's really struggle with detail, E's and C's are much better at detail, and E's are the masters of details. E's are fiercely loyal. So how can these strengths be useful in building an isogenics business? Write down a couple of specific ways that these strengths can be useful. Yeah, let me give you a couple of examples of challenges. They can come across as nothing is ever good enough. They can be very slow to trust others' opinions. Others often have to wonder what is going on inside of them. The E naturally goes inside to process, and differently than a C, once things get kind of figured out and situated in the E brain, that's it. The E can just be like, okay, yeah. And so where the C will go inside to get things kind of settled, but then they don't feel fully settled until they have an opportunity to externally process as well. That doesn't naturally happen for the E. And so the E has to remind themselves or however you say that, to include other people in what's gone on inside. They can sometimes have a hard time knowing when to stop. They won't move until they can do it right. They tend to hold grudges. They can stall movement if they don't think they have the resources to do things the right way. They can seem judgmental. They can get so focused on the details that they lose sight of the big picture. They can lose sight of the forest for the minutia of the tree that they're staring at. So what skills and processes can a need develop to help manage these things? I'll give you a couple of examples. So the challenge of being slow to trust others' thoughts and opinions, to let others in. A process is to identify a set of questions or steps to go through to assess differing opinions. So if you understand that this is a natural tendency, you can say, okay, I'm gonna ask myself these three to five questions to decide whether or not I want to put stock in this person. Where's their information coming from? What past history do I have with this person? Where did they get their information? Do I trust that? Those kinds of things. You can identify a process there. Partnership. Partner with people you trust and view as knowledgeable, so that you don't have to question every opinion or thought that comes up. Ease do this pretty well, but if you're intentionally in saying, okay, yeah, this is somebody that I trust. This is one that I categorize as one who knows, and then it'll be easier for your brain to trust that. Now you got to be careful. Also, this is also a challenge, because combined with that loyalty, an E can categorize somebody as an authority in their life who maybe shouldn't be. And then they can put a lot of stock in things and not question it, because they've already categorized that person as one who knows, and they have a lot of loyalty to that person. And so that can become a challenge. And so you can revisit that and make sure that you're putting stock in the places that you want to be putting stock in.
One of my research classes, I think, introduced a really good process for this as well, is to really know what you know. It's almost like necessary to also study the opposite view. And I really liked that for the little slice of my e-brain. Yeah, just to really validate, what I think I'm learning or what I'm looking for. To study the opposite of it is really helpful.
Yeah. So foreclosure, foreclosure is when you settle on something and that becomes it, right? And an R can do that about 5 seconds into a conversation because their brains are so fast that you can get 2 or 3 words out and the R brain is like already at the end of the story. And that can be a form of foreclosure. An E can do that when they settle on the conclusion and that becomes set in stone. And so you've got to intentionally recognize that and intentionally do things to, again, just make sure that you're not staying foreclosed and excluding opportunities because you've already determined something to be so. Okay, halting or slowing movement, either not having the resources or not being quite sure yet. A skill is what we call opposite action. Opposite action is simply doing the exact opposite of what you want to do in the moment. And it's as simple as like, if I don't want to talk to that person and just say, okay, what would be the exact opposite action of that? Okay, I'm going to talk to them. I really don't want to ask for the sale right now. What's the opposite action of that? To ask. Okay, I'm just going to ask. I really don't want to get out of bed and go exercise. What's the opposite action? I'm going to go. I really want to eat this entire cake. What's the opposite action? I'm going to grab some carrots. That's so opposite action. Our brains are amazing organs and super smart. And so just by asking yourself what the opposite action can be, the vast majority of the time, your brain will give you exactly what that is. So that's a really helpful skill to combat this. Process, set deadlines. And then a partnership to help with that. Share your deadlines with an accountability partner. Recognize this tendency. Again, this tendency can't be obliterated. The E brain is not going to want to move until it feels confident that it's going to do it the right way. And so set a deadline and have a partner to help you with that. A great process and partnership tool there. Challenge, knowing when to stop. This is, it's hard to even really conceptualize. For me, most of the time, it's hard to conceptualize this as a challenge, but it is really something. If you're an E can really beat a dead horse, and they can stay in relationships too long. They can stay after, stay on a bone for too long. And so most of the time, this tenacity is one of the biggest strengths of the E, but there are times when it becomes a challenge. Identify a process. After I've approached somebody 18 times, I'll move on. Again, just an example of that. Challenge.
I've noticed, I don't know if it's just ease, but a lot of people like talk to their family members, and because their family members haven't said yes yet, they won't move on. And so I like that one a lot. Like I can ask my mom 18 times, and when she says no the 18th time, then I'll move on. I think that's really good.
Difficulty conveying thoughts. Again, the E brain is such a labyrinth of complexity. And so a skill, master the art of efficient articulation. That's a skill. Practice writing your thoughts concisely. A lot of times an E can find themselves telling a very elaborate story. We talked about that when we went through the E last week, but again, it's this, if an E is going to share something, they want to walk you through the process of how they landed where they landed, which is really great. And if you're in a relationship with an E, which we'll talk more about, it's important to make space for that. But if you're communicating with an O or an R, sometimes it can be difficult for you to be understood if there's always a long story.
That's a big one for network marketing. We call it verbal vomit or turning on the fire.
Right.
When you're telling your story, people's
Yes. Yeah.
eyes gloss over.
Right. Yeah. Good, really good point. Okay. We're not going to get into this very deeply in this first level of this, but I just want to mention cognitive distortions because it is something that we will offer in subsequent trainings, and it's a really important part of what we're talking about with identifying your why it's your why, what your strengths are to help that why, what challenges are in the way. Cognitive distortions are limiting core beliefs that filter how we perceive ourselves and our interactions with others. They become like glasses, contacts, even better than glasses, because sometimes you can look around glasses. They become contacts that are right on our eyes that filter everything that comes at us, and we don't even realize we're wearing them. So this is how this can look: blaming, denying, overgeneralizing, double standard, mind reading, catastrophizing, fallacy of fairness, all or nothing thinking, emotional reasoning, negativity bias, labeling, magical thinking, over personalization. And each temperament has a propensity toward particular cognitive distortions. They greatly influence our feelings of sadness. They feed our anxiety, and they make it difficult to see the value in ourselves. And here's the thing that I do want you to take from this aspect: they are subjective. The brain is an organ. It is a neurological web. It's a neurological filter programming that is subjective. And we don't approach them as subjective because most of them have been with us our entire lives. And so we don't have any conscious memory of ever not thinking the way that we think. And so we don't even recognize the subjectivity of them and the power that we have to change them. Again, I'm not going to go, I'm just going to hit a couple of these. These are some common ones for C's. Feeling like other people don't want them around, don't care what they have to say, project their own insecurities and think that other people see them that way. These are some alternative beliefs, again, that we'll teach you how to do more intensely later. I am enough, the right amount of me to combat the I'm too much. I do have things to offer. These are common ones for O's. Personalization. If other people aren't happy, it's my fault. It's my job to make everybody happy. It's not okay for me to be unhappy. I have to be on all the time. These are some things to combat some of those common ones. It's okay to look on the bright side. Optimism adds value to the world. I can have fun responsibly. These are common ones for the R. Jumping to conclusions, control fallacies, get on board or get out of the way. I know my own brain. I know exactly what I want, and you're not going to change that. Snap judgments are firm. It's a hassle to reconsider. Global labeling. The past doesn't affect me. That comes from their future orientation. Again, once you start understanding temperament and how that filters, you can see how we land where we land. The way that I'm feeling won't last forever. That's a real good one for the R brain. It's okay to take the lead. These are common ones for the E. Should statements, lots of shoulding. I should have done that. I should have said that. All or nothing fallacy. My way is the right way. If you disagree with me, you're wrong. Some alternatives. I leave every situation better because I was there. There's more than one good way to do most things. So those are just examples of that. And what we're really going to be getting into now as we continue to move forward here next week is creating effective partnerships. Doing the things that only you can do. I hope you're seeing that with your primary and secondary types, there are things that you are going to be better at than anybody else on your team. There are things that you're going to be better at than anybody else in your family. And you want to be in a position where you're doing those things, and as much as possible, only those things. Utilize the core strengths of your team members. Teamwork makes the dream work. So that's where we're going. And we'll really be getting into what success looks like. So there you go. That's the motivation and the why. I've got to jump off pretty quickly today. My boy's got a piano recital in a little bit.
Thank you so much. I wanted to just mention the review link. I forgot to post it in chat. I will post it in the Facebook group immediately after this. And then I'm also, within the next day or so, we'll be posting some worksheets that have some of the things that you might have missed on the slides, and also a way to like process through those. So watch for those. I'll add them to the files part of the Facebook group, and there'll be a notification for that. So.
All right, I'm going to jump off. Thank you all so much for being here. I hope you found it helpful. We'll get the workbooks to you. Take the time, please, to fill those out. It will really help you be able to implement this stuff. I hope everybody has a good weekend.
Thanks, Dr. Slade. We're going to hang on here for a
Yeah.
second for those that have questions. I know he's got to jump off abruptly there. That went long, not long, just a lot of information. A lot to process there, huh? If that's a lot to process, type a 2 to the chat box. Like, it's all meaningful stuff. Like, don't you just want to know it, like, and just understand it? Like, I wish we could download. Maybe Elon could come up with something where we could download this stuff. But that's the work, right? We got to choose to want to do the work. But a lot of information. I'm just going to unmute this and just see if anybody wants to articulate anything, and just check in with you guys, see how you're feeling. What you're processing, maybe a little bit of your takeaways. If there's something you would like to see that, that we haven't, I want to say applicated, but that's not the right word. What's the word I'm looking for? Applied or put into what we're doing. Just some feedback, but also just check in where you're at, how you're feeling, what you're processing. I'm going to unmute this. So if you have background noise, make sure you stay muted. All right, if anybody wants to unmute. It is a process. This is like how do you how do you walk 1,000 miles one step at a time, right?
Yeah, Dave, when he talked about, sponsoring people and moving on, being able to identify that and help a person identify that in themselves so that we can support them with follow-up. We've had people become sponsor monsters and just blow through an incredible number of people and really not do a good job of following up and establishing a relationship. And as a team, we can really bring all of the skills needed to the party. That's what really struck me today about this. Yeah,
and those temperaments that don't feel like that's a hassle or that's the challenge side of their temperament. I don't know that it's kind of a blind spot, because just working in ISACORE for 18 years and seeing the challenges that people face and what takes people out or causes them not to have the success that they could have if they, just applied some things that they're not applying. And one of those is like for people who do great at connecting with people, but then they move on because it's kind of a hassle. I could see how they could feel like they've drawn a conclusion. I can't remember what temperament it was, but maybe was that an O, where they draw a conclusion and they decide it's too much of a hassle for me to follow up with that person to the degree that my mentors and, books tell me to. So they also throw the baby out with the bathwater rather than inviting somebody from the team who would love to follow up with those people and really nurture them and create that community with those people. And so hopefully that this does, like, we really sit, like, it's hard, right? But you have to choose, like, choose your hard. Do you want to keep putting forth the effort and not getting the result? Or would you rather take the hard of, because that's hard, right? To keep putting forth the effort and not getting the result, be consistent and have that grit, but also choosing the hard that it's opposite day. Like, let's do the opposite, like what he said, opposite action, I think it was. And let me call somebody who can help, nurture that person or whatever. And it's not just with that specific thing. There are other things like that as well. And so I think that's a really good point, especially when it comes to building a team. And I would say the person that's connecting with a lot of people, that's a huge value to the team. Like, it's inestimable, the amount of value that is.
Yeah, I wanted to
Yeah.
say there, like you said, I think even rephrasing the phrase sponsor monster has such a negative connotation, and it can be a way to either beat someone up or beat yourself up. But if you're an O, for example, O's connect with people very well, and a lot of people, when they do it very genuinely, their brain also lives in the present. So as soon as the present is moved on, it isn't that they don't, like, they weren't genuine or whatever, they just are in the new present, right? The present moves. And so when you recognize, I'm great at connecting with people, I'm not necessarily great at the follow through and that. So I'm going to find somebody on my team that is really good with that and partner with them. David Wood is amazing at this. He's an O, and he realizes some of his challenges. So he has an assistant that is really good at follow through. And he's learned his process is ask Denise or follow up with Denise. Or, I mean, he'll do that all the time. And I see a lot of those that do that. So anyway, my main point there is, like, learning to recognize how we talk negatively about ourselves, to ourselves, or about other people. And remembering it's probably not that it's broken. They're not being a sponsor monster. They're just really good at connecting with a lot of people really quickly. And then what's the next step in the process to keep them and to nurture them?
And when we see
See,
something
that's the feel good analogy, because Carrie's saying sponsor monster does not feel good. It feels shameful, right? And so that's the benefit of Carrie's perspective being added to my perspective. You see, isn't that cool?
Yeah, that's a partnership.
It's so
right there.
amazing. Yeah. And by the way, I don't know if we're going to have a section on grief counseling, but Kirkwood is closing tomorrow, and so my office is closing. Okay, now I don't know if you guys have ever seen an office with a view like this before, but I'm gonna miss this. Okay.
Is Malcolm an O? Right? Fun in the moment. Let's make it fun. And my mind is, okay, all right, enough of that. So no, that's awesome. So, and when we see something like that, we've identified that. I need to realize there's 5 other things that I'm not seeing, right? And so I really love this process and the whole masterminding thing behind it.
Hey, Dave.
And one other thing too about that, and then we'll go to you, Bonnie, is when you bring somebody in to Isagenics, so we're talking from the Isagenics perspective here, that person's connected with you. So if that's not a skill, or if that's not a part of your core motivation, is to use those strengths that you have to nurture that person along and figure out all of the minutia and the details of them, progressing and getting their needs taken care of, then there's going to be some skills that you're going to, want to develop. Because if you pawn them off to another person too quickly, they're out because they connected with you. They bought into why you're doing it, which is something they resonated with, which may not be the reason why the person you handed them off to is doing it. And therefore that harmony's lost. I see that a lot. And it's like, I want to take care of them for you, but like, I'm not going to be able to do it like you can. you know? And so because they resonated with your why you're doing it and who you are as an individual. So we don't like just make it black and white. You learn the skills and don't pawn them off. It's a combination of all of that, but also having room to bend to learn some of those skills to where you can help nurture them and keep that relationship going. Does that make sense? Bonnie.
That was
So
really
what you said in the beginning, Dave, you know, being on your trip and being around people again, I see that too. People are still kind of a little cautious. But what hit me too is the O in me. I stuffed it.
Can I just, before you go on, I just want to say the people that are being cautious are not the ones that are doing it, because I saw an integration and a communication and a, you know, people engaged at a heightened level that I'd never seen before previous to the last 3 years. And so the people that are hesitating are the ones that still haven't stepped into that environment yet, because every time people are stepping into that, they're loving it and they want more of that. And so I know that that's what you mean too as well, Bonnie. I just wanted to clarify that the people that were there were not cautious at all. It was hugging and just really, I would say, even more intimate conversations, because they've been longing for that. And they've been like sharing things that maybe they wouldn't quite share so quickly with people. And it was awesome. Like, that's how we should really be, right? More authentic. And I'm seeing that in that environment.
What
What
comes
else
to
were you
my
gonna say?
mind is I wish we'd have had this 20 years ago, because my old personality took things so personal. And if I'd have just, you know, really realized whoever I was talking to, that I took that and known what I know I'm learning now. Wow, how could that could have just benefited me all the more, and maybe got me out of my stuckness.
Yeah, do
know,
you feel like you wouldn't take things as personal
yeah,
or
that's
draw conclusions as quickly?
yes, because I'm one of those that I'm a red personality. My personality, I am easily, I feel stupid, you might say, around some red personalities.
I think I saw you type that in the comments that
Yeah,
you
I
felt
mean,
stupid,
it's like,
yeah.
oh, okay, that's just the way, you know. So for a sensitive personality, you know, I'm cautious of that as well, but now I recognize it more.
yeah.
Cool.
Just to like punctuate that, and it's probably not necessary, but I'm working with a couple right now where the wife is an O and the husband is a C, and C's remember everything, especially if it has an emotional component, and O's don't remember everything, but it's not because they're stupid, but the dynamic was like, she must be stupid, I've got to help her figure out how to remember stuff. And one of the light bulbs that came on finally, it took several conversations, but finally it was like a breath of like, oh, she doesn't forget because she's stupid, and it's also that she doesn't care. It's not that she doesn't care about me, it's that's how her brain works. And it just was like this big, like, we're able to move forward now that we get that. So those are the kinds of things, that reasons why I love Core so much. It's just like, oh, you know, anyway, he doesn't blow up because it's about me. It's just the, you know, or whatever the temperament is. He doesn't, yeah. It's really good to be able to recognize those things in yourself and to like validate yourself, because if you can't validate yourself, who's going to, right? No one else will be able to if you can't. So anyway, I could go
So
on.
good for relationships. It's real. Me and Paula are laughing a lot more now. We recognize each other. So good.
Awesome. Yes. And if your relationships are going well, your business relationships will also be going well, or at least better. So that's really good.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks for the comments, you guys. Noah, are you saying you want to share, or
It's me. I'm on Noah's computer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'd love to share something. And so we're in a three-way, or like a multiple people in a messaging thread about an upcoming event here in Vegas that Dave is presenting. And with my heart pounding in my chest, I said, I can, you know, I'm not really good at it, but I can play around and create a flyer in Canva. Totally hoping that someone would say, I'm good at it, I got it, I'll take care of it. No, Dave said, it's all yours. I'm like, so it took
So
me how long?
how does that hit you for me to know? How does that hit you?
I'm like, so for my first thought was like, okay, am I going to be able to create a flyer that's good enough? Right? Because I'm just learning, kind of playing around in Canva. Is that going to be good enough to really say, like, well, really, is it going to be good enough for Dave? That's really was my thought, right? It took me how long? A week. And I kept saying, yeah, I'm working on it. I'm working on it. And I literally put it together like 20 minutes before I sent it out to you guys, because I was so stuck and so in my head about it. And then, but and I kind of see where I had to develop a skill to overcome that by playing around in Canva until I felt like, okay, this is good. And then again, my heart pounding in my chest when I sent it out to you guys. But then the best thing that came back was you saying, I love it. And I love how you picked up on that, how you put the car in there. And I was kind of like, like a little friendly banter back and forth. And where I said, oh yeah, I picked that up somewhere. Someone mentioned it. That made my day to get your okay, and not to say, well, maybe put this in there or maybe do this, because, but for me, it was good. It was a good thing because it was confirmation for me that if I learned, because I learned that skill, not that I perfected it, but I put some effort into it. And of course, as a C, my biggest reward for this was you saying it's awesome and it's,
You felt seen.
It's good the way it is. I felt seen, and
Definitely.
you picked up on the car and all that stuff, and I was like, oh, that made my day.
Yeah, I'm getting chills everywhere. And this is the dynamics that are so subtle in building a business, especially in network marketing, where it's all about camaraderie, right? And supporting each other. Like, I didn't think of it and put that much time and energy into it the way you did. And it shows to me how these little interactions that we have where we depend on people for things, even though however small or minimal they are a big influence in the way people are seeing themselves. Is that a good way of saying that?
Yeah, and it totally gave me, you gave me, not even knowing, probably an opportunity to grow. Where I would have just as happily sat back if someone else would have chimed in and say, hi, I can whip this out in 10 minutes, right? And would have said, perfect, okay, good. And I would not have questioned it. I would not have criticized it. I would have been like, someone else did it. I'm good with that. Yeah. But, it opened the door for me when you said, well, it's all yours. No, I really have to do it.
Yeah, that's an awesome share. Really good share. Thanks, Katya. Leah, go ahead. Is it Leah or Leah?
Hi, Leah. So I keep hearing people reference this red. Is that something that I've missed? And I don't recall that being mentioned as far as this goes. So fill me in.
It's the R. It's the R. It's not, we are so used to R being similar to red. At least I am. But it's the R, and they use the red for it because it probably most simulates it. Okay. Is that right, Carrie? It's most similar? Or
no,
just
the
because
reason,
it's R?
Because an R energy is like fire, and it's not necessarily a red, it's more of a fire color is what we're going for. So we use colors to represent the symbol in nature that the core of most represents. These are like an ocean, O's are like sunshine, R's are like fire, and E's are like a solid tree in a forest.
It is a little confusing because those of us that know the color code, which is different than this, there's some.
It's like you're speaking a different language.
It is a little bit
to class.
Yeah. So we don't refer to core by color, but because the color code is used often in isogenics, it's really important to realize that they're not the same. There are similarities, but the E doesn't even exist in the color code. It's kind of mixed in with C and R a little bit. The only one that's really the most similar is the yellow and the O. They're pretty similar. And then there's nuances of all of them and the others. So when we can, not that the color code is bad, it's just missing some things.
Incomplete, yeah.
So, yeah. And so anyway,
So
in communicating, if we use the letters, it makes it more clear. But anyway, that's just a.
So is it that the color system was something that was used to refer to these variant temperament types in the isogenic system before, while core was still in development, and now core is the model that's kind of filled in the blanks for the color system?
I would say it's more the personal development world that uses those. And so many people are on this personal development journey that we get exposed to that. It's not isogenics.
David Wood uses the color
Like
code
in general.
David Wood uses the color code at UIA, which is why I think it comes up a lot. Core isn't yet an isogenics thing. It's something that I've wanted to be a part of isogenics. And so this group is kind of the first exposure to core through isogenics.
And core
Okay.
is, and the
UIA is an isogenics thing. I'm
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. There's
University in Action.
I got to put them all together to know what you're talking about.
UIA is a business training in isogenics. It stands for University in Action.
Okay. So
They
then
travel
they use
around.
the color system. So that's an isogenic specific language for something. Core is Denham Slade put it together
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
And this Dave Wood is, but I think that's the name you gave. Wood is someone within UIA for isogenics.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a
That way
master
I'm like,
trainer. But
Yeah.
that's close. That's not quite exactly, because the colors existed before isogenics.
They just
they've been in the
adopted
personal
that.
development world for a long time.
Okay.
And so it's probably
that's
one of the
what-
most accepted forms of teaching in the personal development.
Okay.
Core is something that Dr. Slade came up with.
Something
as a
like
PhD.
Myers-Briggs or all these other different types of temperament, personality type, gifts, skills, abilities types
Yeah.
things. That way I know if I
Yeah.
can look at it and familiarize myself with it to be more fluent in what people are referring to and complement that with my own personal development, which is one of my biggest passions. So then I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, if this is
Yeah.
accessible
Just for
information,
that understanding. Yeah, I'm that way too. And I keep saying the colors accidentally. Like I keep catching myself like, oh, don't do that, because it really is different. It
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
The color code it's been around for a really long time.
there's a
And
whole lot.
yeah, sorry. It's one of the reasons that Dr. Slade did the research. There were several reasons, but color code was one of them because it's one that a lot of people know. And it and some of the other systems out there weren't consistent with what he was seeing in his office with people. And he's always been interested in people. Either that or the other systems were so complicated that it was hard to apply them. And so
Right.
his own research and came up with core, and there's some really awesome distinctions, and it's still a very simple way to understand. A lot
Right,
of
it's an advancement that filled in the blanks of the things that were already in place. But
Yes.
as we grow and we learn and we develop in the field of science, biology, and so forth, and discover new information, we realize our full potential. And then we need new scales to measure that potential and assess it and develop it in greater ways.
Exactly. And I think you must be E or have some E in you because you've got some really
Um,
great.
I'm thinking her E is
Secondary
shining
E.
through. That's what
Secondary
Carrie's passion is to get this to the world, because
Right.
it hasn't been
It's
on
good
this
stuff.
level.
It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, and there's a lot of holes.
There are.
That's my
and
car.
right. Yes. One of
Interrupting.
one of the reasons why it's good, I believe, is because a lot of them will mix both nature and nurture. And this is getting to the nature part, because nurture affects us in all different ways. But when we get to the why behind it and the part of us that doesn't change, it helps us to understand what we're working with, and we can focus on making changes in the areas that we can actually change while we're accepting the parts that we can't.
Hardwiring versus conditioning.
Exactly. Yep.
Right.
Awesome. All right, let's move on. Thank you, Leah. Kelly, let's go with you and then we'll end.
Thanks. So a couple things. One is, as I've been going through this, and thanks, Carrie, for helping get my pie chart that just never showed up. So I could check it out anyway. I don't know if any writing came with it, but I've got the chart anyway. I find that some of and this is probably where the secondary or even tertiary things overlap, but it's as much of an R as I am, and there's still other parts that are chunks, but it's like we're looking at of that R part. I don't resonate with a lot of it. I just don't. And I feel I think the reason being is that I've done so much training in the personal development with, the 8:30 calls, let's say, with Dave, or different things that Lenny's doing, or different things that all of us have gone through, that I feel like I've evolved, that past some of this supposed hard wiring. That's not.
That's a common thought. Usually what happens is we've learned really well how to manage ourselves in this world, that we have developed skills that kind of cover our temperament. When I first learned that I was a C, I didn't resonate with my C-ness at all, because I had learned how to not be me. And that isn't always the case, like that it's trying really hard to not be you. There are different nuances that if you'll stick with it. Temperament, it doesn't change. It's one of the research, like as I'm doing my PhD, there are so many studies that show that temperament doesn't change, but the way that we adapt to it, when we learn that, plus our secondary type, plus our attachment style, really plays a lot into how our core shows up. And then other influences that we have, there's all of these layers. If maybe you and I can do a call sometime where, we can get to the core of it. Also, it's really important to understand that the assessment is still in process. We're still developing it as we go. That's part of what my PhD is about. Dr. Slade's PhD was in research. He's great at it, but it's not perfect. One of the reasons is because, getting at the why that somebody does something is kind of hard to do in an assessment that's online, where you're not having a conversation. And also, we have trauma that gets in the way. Sometimes C's identify as everyone, because C's can see the perspective from other perspectives. Oftentimes, if somebody has really a strong, all four of them, or if they show, really strong 3, it is more that they're a C than that they're all those things, because they learn to identify with all the other areas. And then somebody that just isn't very self-aware is another reason, which usually is trauma. So it's not a perfect assessment. So if it's not resonating with you, that doesn't mean it doesn't necessarily mean that you're wrong. It might have been that the way you took the assessment, either you weren't getting at the why of it, you were dealing more with what you've learned. I mean, there's different reasons. So one of my things that I really love to do is interview people to help you get to, let's figure it out. So you can reach out to me, message me on Facebook. And also we are going to be developing, I guess, a little bit of a product where you can do a Q&A call with either me or with Dr. Slade for a small fee, to be able to really ask these questions and figure out, if I'm confused and my core isn't illuminating my brain and I'm oh my gosh, that's me, then maybe you'll want to do one of those calls that we can actually spend some time to get to the nitty-gritty of it. Does that make sense?
Go ahead, Kelly. I just want to share something there too, but did you want to say something, Kelly?
No, I was waiting. It's okay. I've thoughts formulated, but I'd love to hear what you have to say too, Dave.
Yeah, maybe this will help you process. And everything Carrie said, I absolutely agree with. I mean, she's the expert in this. But what I've observed as well, JoJo had a hard time accepting what her E-ness, is that what it was? She's I'm not that. And what I've come to understand and become aware of is there's some things when he's going through some of those other temperaments, like in a blue, there's a bullet point that's totally me. I feel like that's my nature. And I told well, maybe I'm a blue, but then when they start saying the other things, I don't resonate with those. But what I've learned to do, thanks to, Carrie and Dr. Slade, and then being out there with Crystal and JoJo, they'd say, but why do you do that? Why do you do that thing that you agree with, that you are in the blue? And my core motivation is different than why the blue does it. And that's why the blue resonates with probably everything on that list, where I agree with. I've just learned a skill that helps me to make progress in my life and get the results that I want. And it's become such an ingrained skill that I mismatched with, well, that's what I am. But when I say, why do I do that? It goes back to the red or the E in me. Does that make sense?
That it's the C and the R that you're talking about, not the blue and the red.
Yes.
But also, along with what you're saying, Dave, all of us are human. Every single one of us is human being, and we all have a core need to connect with people. All of us do. And we all have a core need to matter and to have a sense of love and belonging. And so humanness also plays into this. One of the things that, along with it's a skill that I've learned, is it's valuable. Like especially E's have probably the hardest time accepting this, accepting that, like, oh, this is, that there's truth to this or whatever. And I think the reason is because they are really, they believe very strongly what they believe, and they don't like being told who they are. They don't like to be put in a box. And this isn't a box, like you articulated earlier. And a lot of E's I've noticed are like, well, but that means a lot to me, because of an E, and anybody, but especially an E, if you've determined that being kind and having compassion and connecting with people and good relationships is important, and it's the right way to do things, then that's how you're going to show up. Like, you're going to learn the skills because it is valuable to you. So core values is another part that plays into this, that is informed by temperament, but I can value getting things done. I'm really good at getting things done. I always have been, but it has nothing to do with me being an R. I am not motivated by resolution, but getting things done really appeals a lot to my ability to feel comfortable in a lot of different situations. So yeah, it's getting to the why of what you do. And that's, anyway, it's literally, if you can't tell, it's my passion. So reach out to me until we have a link that actually, like, you can either meet with me or Dr. Slade to have, like, to pay a fee to have us, like, really dig in deep with you for an hour. I think it can be helpful.
Yeah, and it's not to say that the assessment worked properly. Like, I'm not saying either way, no, you are what that said, or I'm not saying that it could have. I took a lot of time answering that to make sure I kept asking myself, why am I answering that question? And I took, and I kept switching between that first one and the second one until I really felt like, okay, that's what's motivating me. Because it's kind of hard when you're reading the test. For me, it's like multiple choice is the worst kind of test for me to take. And so I just had to really make sure, because I wanted to know so I could have that foundational knowledge of what I'm working with, in a defined way. But
And just remember, we're not here to tell you who you are. The point of this whole program is to help you discover the core of who you are. So,
and another thing too, I'm a really touchy-feely person. Like, I love hugging the grandkids. I love just being with them and touching them and laying in bed with the granddaughter watching TV, and so there is probably a part of the C, is that comfort and connection? Is that a touchy-feely type? Like, I like to give hugs. I like that touching part, the sensation. But I'm only a small part of the C, like 6%.
Yeah, and I'll just tell you, the small percentages are usually the third and fourth are more learned behaviors than they are temperament based. But you're human, and connection feels good to humans, and then you learn those skills. So yeah, touchy-feely, I can be and have been most of my life a porcupine because of my attachment style. But now that I've learned how to be healthier, yes, I realize I do love that, but I wasn't good at that. And that's my, you know what I mean? So someone would say, oh, if you're a C because you're touchy-feely, it's not about what you do, it's why you do it. So yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Good stuff.
I'm going to grab the Facebook link.
can I
Yeah, go ahead, Kelly. Didn't want to cut you off. Go ahead.
but thank you, both of you, for that. It's just, I think in readings, because the E part of being very exact. I mean, I think Dave, I've been able to, over the years, I've said, oh, every time I'm desiring to go to the next level, Dave says something and I'm like, that's the tweak I needed. I think it's because we are aligned a lot in our core temperaments. And so I hear you, like, I hear you, and I mold and to adapt. It's a fit for how I learn and how I go. So I get that. And I think that when I'm looking at some of those questions, it's not that I don't identify with certain things. Some things I go, nope, that's definitely not it, right? And certainly I can see not being in denial of different things. It's just some of the stuff. I'm like, it was like, when you're, and you're right. It's everyone's changing and different, but wait. Sorry, my shake monster over here. I'm like, I already gave you 2. Hold on, talking. So it's like certain aspects of it. I'm like, I have a flat out rejection to, you go into a question, have a, like one of some of the different things that are there. I'm like, yes, totally that, but not that sentence. Yes, totally that. Definitely not that part of the sentence. Sorry, guys.
Oh, you're good.
But so I'll leave off from that for the second. The other aspect I wanted to bring in is when we were talking about with isogenics and working with using the you call it the partnerships. That's the word I wanted. Using the partnerships to stop it. God, I think she's a full E, relentless. So
Does she look out the bathroom door? Mom, let me in.
God, well, that's my entire family. But in this case, I'm so sorry. What I'm trying to say around her is that when I'm trying to look at and find ways to form partnerships to make up the difference of she's 2. When I'm looking at different ways to try to form partnerships, I'm really working with as many business builders as I can in different entrepreneurs in order to expand, and coming from the business perspective and not just the health side of things, being able to figure out how to work with people to get the R-driven results, to have them be able to do the work, because like I feel like I'm Atlas, carrying the world all the time, picking up everyone else's slack. And so figuring out how to not motivate people, how to say, okay, this is what you're good at, how we can, sure, we can partner, but like in a team setting, as an example, okay, can you follow up with these people? I mean, what's the motivation for them to do so?
If I questions, just to kind of interject right there, because we got to jump off, but that's going to come out as we study more of this, those kinds of questions. Like Carrie said, it's a deeper dive, and also going back and re-watching the videos that we've already done, because we don't catch everything or we don't remember everything, and we'll learn things as we go back and watch those videos again. But I think we're still going to uncover some more as we move forward. But what you're talking about is like the whole big pie, right? I mean, that's, getting our teams and the people, regardless of what temperaments they are, to do what's going to best serve them and the team. That's the big $1 million.
Let's see, you don't want to take what we learn and then like get to the end, and our temperament wants to do that the most. Like I'm going to get to the end and I'm going to figure out how to use it right now. And so learning that core is only part of 7 steps of how to be a healthy version of you. It's a very important first step. And so as we go, I just wanted to do a couple housekeeping things and then we can end. But one of them is I posted the Facebook group link in the chat.
And it also is in your welcome email. So if you search for that in your email, and you can find the link. If not, you can reach out to me on Facebook Messenger, and I can share the link with you. The rest of this ISACORE level 1 is geared around the 30-day action plan that Isogenics, the last booklet from Celebrate, I think it was from NYKO of this year. So we took that and we're using that outline in what we're helping introduce core into. And then there will be a level 2 and a level, different options to dig deeper if you really want to learn to become a the healthiest version of you that you can possibly be. Because again, there are 7 principles of healthy. Core is the first one. And a lot of them will be introduced in here. And it's just the beginning. And so letting yourself, be patient and be willing to let it all sink in. And the repetition alone is really, really helpful. So anyway.
Okay. All right. Thanks, you guys. We'll see you in the Facebook group and next week. Have a great weekend.
Dave, will you save the chat before you get off?
I
Because
did earlier. Do I have to save it again to get the rest of
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, if you would.
Yeah. Let's see. Save chat. Okay.
Thank you. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.